Hi, I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's newsletter is going to be life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, I figured I'd do something a little different with today's newsletter. I want to kind of tie in some current events, obviously, that are impacting pretty much everybody that's watching this video in some way, shape, or form. Because I'm a life coach and I'm all about peak performance and reaching your full potential, especially the topics that I cover in my second book, Mastering Yourself. Because life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is something that the founding fathers of the United States of America really focused on regarding the Constitution. Because the idea behind their thinking was that we're all divine beings created by the Creator, and therefore our freedom, our natural rights, if you will, are innate. In other words, once we're born into the world, they don't come from the state. They don't come from man. They don't come from man-made laws. They come from God. And the Constitution was not written to say what our rights were. It was written to protect our rights from corrupt people in government. Because when the founding fathers studied all the way back through thousands of years of history, they looked at Rome and why freedom and why the Roman Empire fell, what happened, and why things always tend to end up in tyranny. And our founders even noted that every single democracy that had existed prior to the United States of America had always eventually murdered itself from within. It became corrupt and eventually disintegrated when people no longer believed in their values. And if you've ever studied the fall of Rome and what happened to it, it's pretty fascinating. And you see a lot of the same things in modern society today in the West. A lot of the Romans, once they got corrupt, they debauched their currency, their Senate was corrupt, their politicians were corrupt, and then they started giving bread and circuses, if you will, to the people, the mob of Rome, if you will, to kind of keep them quiet. So they slowly put more non-precious metals in the currency and debauched it. And because things were good, you had a lot of the women were saying, oh, we got to take care of everybody, these barbarians, if we just let them in and we take care of them, they'll just assimilate into our society and it'll be wonderful, it'll be great. And so what happened is you had more and more people coming in that Rome had always fought, and they didn't really assimilate into the society. They came for the free stuff, if you will, but they really weren't interested in becoming a part of Rome. And eventually, over the centuries, many centuries, the original ideas and the basis that Rome was founded upon were no longer. And you see a lot of those same things today, especially like the hot button things of immigration, where you've probably heard the saying, the bleeding heart liberal. They want to take care of everybody. They don't want any borders. They want a world without borders. And so a lot of people that lean left tend to say, hey, if they make it here in the United States, let's take care of them. Let's give them money. Let's give them free education. Let's just take care of them, and they'll assimilate, and it'll be awesome. It'll be wonderful. And we'll have a utopia because we're just a rich nation. And the reality is a lot of the people that come across our border aren't interested in assimilating. They're coming for the free stuff. Lots of people that come here and work illegally and send remittances back home, you can see plenty of interviews with them. A lot of them, they don't have any desire or intention to become American citizens. They want to work here for 10 or 15 years and then make enough money and send plenty of money back home. And then once they've made enough, they go back to their country of origin and they can live like kings. So, yeah, they add a lot of value to our society, but they take capital out of our economy in the form of reducing our money supply. And if you're not creating new money to make that up, you're reducing the money supply and circulation in the economy by having people working here, especially when they work here illegally. They don't pay any taxes. They just take money out of the economy. That money has to physically be made up somehow. Otherwise, if you reduce the money supply and circulation, the economy goes downhill. So the whole idea really behind the West was that you're supposed to be able to toil and individual freedom, come up with a purpose and a mission that's exciting and compelling to you, that gets you up early in the morning and keeps you up late at night, that if you want to work 80 or 100 hours a week for no pay for years and years on end until you eventually figure out the right business model to offer whatever product or service you want, eventually when it takes off, you get the fruits of your labor. You get the windfall of that, but you also absorb the losses. And so in order to reach your full potential, because that's what I do in my work, my first book, 3% Man, and obviously my second book, Mastering Yourself, is you got to have the freedom to do that. You also have to have a good, stable economy and money supply, which is one of the functions of government. I did a whole documentary on this called Economic Prosperity for All, where I discuss the financial system, because the reality is almost 100% of the people in the world have no idea how banking and finance works. They don't understand the money supply. They don't understand what money is, the purpose of money, where it comes from, how it circulates in the economy. And not only do most people not understand it, but the people that are informing us, people in the media, and even most of our politicians, they really have no idea how the system works. And part of the reasons why I put these topics in my second book, Mastering Yourself, and why I've gone through the tremendous expense of making these documentaries, is to help educate people so they can understand it. So they can understand when people in government, people in power make mistakes and they screw things up, especially like with what's going on with all these lockdowns in the past year, what happened in 2007, 2008 with the crash, is that you get this boom and bust cycle, which is incredibly unbalanced. Now, wealthy people, when you're in a bust cycle, they just sit back and they wait until the foreclosures happen, the industries go belly up, and then they come in and buy assets up for pennies on the dollar. And they're always going to do well. But the people that are paycheck to paycheck, it's like every 8 to 10 years, things get going really well, and then boom, you have another bust cycle happen. And then you look at what the politicians do. It's like just over the weekend, the politicians just got together and like, hey, we finally have a new coronavirus bailout package, and you get a whole $600 for your trouble. I know your business, you went bankrupt and your restaurant went under, or your gym went under, or your retail operation went under, or whatever business happened to be went under, and you're completely bankrupt and all your life savings that you put into it, hey, you know, sorry about your luck. Hey, here's $600 for you. When you look at how the plan is laid out, it's a really small fraction of that $900 billion is actually in direct payments to the people. Most of it is going to the large donors of the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress who voted for it. So once again, it's like, so the argument can be made is like, well, the wealthy people are really getting the bailout, whether it's the corporations, or, I mean, you look like the airline industry, they got several $1 billion more. But I walk down the street where I live, and it really is upsetting to walk around and see all these businesses that I used to see that were thriving at the beginning of this year. Now they're gone. They're out of business. And then there's an empty shop there, or there's a restaurant that went out of business. I mean, that's infuriating. Those are people's lives. These people save for years to have enough money to open a business, and they open a business, they get it going, they get expenses, they get mortgages, they get car payments, and the government just says, only non-essential business, all non-essential businesses have to close, and essential ones can stay open. And so who stays open? You get your Target, your Walmart, your Amazon, they're all having record profits, but all the small business owners are getting crushed. You may have seen that video, I think it was about a week or two ago, that came out where there was this woman in California, and she has a restaurant, and obviously they're locking down in California again, and people aren't allowed to do indoor dining. So they do outdoor dining. And so she built this whole pavilion with tents and everything to make it nice so her customers can eat and she can keep her business open, and she's like down to her last bit of money. And the mayor of LA is like, hey, restaurants have to close, but movies are okay. And so literally in the same parking lot where her restaurant is, they've got all these temporary tents for the craft services because they're making a movie there. It's the same setup, but because it's a movie, that's okay. That's essential business. But her, no, she can't. All that money she invested to have outdoor dining, No, sorry, the restaurants just have to close. And so people are seeing this. And so what's interesting over the last week or so, I'm starting to see a lot of people on the left really getting upset about this and seeing how ridiculous some of these lockdown measures are. And so the point being is I've got a bunch of things that I wrote down because, I've got the feedback I've gotten in the past when I've talked about a bunch of these different things is that people seem to like it when I go on a rant. And so I woke up today thinking, what do I want to talk about? Thought I'd like to go through some of these things because it's affecting all of us. And some of these things are so absurd that people are doing. And it's like millions of lives are being ruined. Every day I read reports, I read stories about people whose children are committing suicide or people that lost their businesses are committing suicide because they've lost everything. And that's just unconscionable what is going on. And it's unjust and it's undue enrichment for a small group of people who happen to be connected because it's obvious the Democrats, the Republicans, conservatives, liberals, Labor Party, whatever you want to call them in the West, whatever label they have, most of them are part of a uniparty, and they tend to be more Marxist, communist leading. In other words, they want to control everything. They want to control and regulate every aspect of our lives. And me being all about freedom of the individual and helping people reach their full potential, anything that encroaches upon our ability to reach our full potential or have freedom to run our lives the way we please, to raise our children the way we please, to run our businesses the way we please, and to live our lives the way we want is being unconstitutionally and unjustly infringed upon with real consequences, the life and death consequences where people are suffering. And it's obvious as a society, those in the West, we're getting to the point where we're starting to see a lot of civil disobedience from people on all sides of the aisle because we all know people that have businesses that have been destroyed. We all know people whose lives have been destroyed by this. We also know people who are prospering in this. I've seen my own business impacted, but I work online mostly. But when you have global human interactions that are in the West, at least, where a majority of my clients come from, it's just kind of come to a halt, and it starts to, everybody locks down, and then they release the easy restrictions, and they open back up, and the virus spreads around because everybody was hiding from the virus, thinking, oh, we're going to control the virus. All you can really do is delay its spread. And so there's a lot of unjust stuff going on, and I thought I would talk about some of that. So, I mean, the $600 stimulus payment, that's an insult. I mean, that doesn't help people. The way I look at it is anybody that has lost their business, say you had a restaurant and you had $300,000 in capital invested into that restaurant, and maybe it was paying you and your significant other $100,000 a year, $120,000 a year in salary. Well, whatever your capital investment is, you should be able to have your CPA or your accountant file that on your tax returns, how much you lost in capital, how much you lost in your income over the past year, and through the IRS, they can easily just reimburse you for whatever your losses are, so you can go out and either open a new restaurant or maybe you start a completely different business, because the government was the one that said that we had to lock down to save lives. And so their decisions are what destroyed people's lives and livelihoods and businesses. And it's unconscionable just to have the big companies, the cruise ships, the airline industry get bailed out because they're large campaign donors and get billions of dollars in free bailout money, but yet, a mom and pop restaurant just has to go out of business and lose everything. That's just unjust and undue enrichment, and it just can't be allowed to happen. It just can't. That's just not fucking right. There's no way. So people need to be able to have some kind of an actual stimulus or bailout package so people can recoup their losses. If people lost their job, it's nice that they got unemployment, but whatever the difference from what unemployment paid and what they lost in their salary, people need to be made whole. Write the damn check. I mean, when you look at these stimuluses that have been passed, and it's such a small fraction of the money actually goes to the people. It's insane what's going on. And it can't be allowed to continue this way. And what I like that I'm seeing, that we're starting to see more and more civil disobedience and people not following. Like, I also saw a video over the weekend of a woman who was in the library, and she's like, it's a public library, and she's not wearing a mask. She's there with her, I think her child, her son, daughter, whatever. And she's like, I'm not wearing a mask. And she's just reading books, spending time with her child, and somebody called the police. And then this woman shows up. This is actually in Florida. So this female police officer shows up acting like a brown shirt fascist and kicking her out of the public library, which she pays taxes for, and she's legally entitled to be there. But because she wasn't wearing a mask, they said she was creating a disturbance. So they're just kicking her out and under threat of arrest. And I've seen other countries, especially Australia and New Zealand, seeing them in the UK, just seeing police officers just beating the crap out of people for handcuffing them and forcing a mask on them and then taking them to jail. It's like, that's not freedom. I mean, at the end of the day, we know now that the average age of people that die from this virus is around 80. So people that are morbidly obese, out of shape, people that are committing slow suicide by food, people that don't take care of their bodies because they don't love themselves enough to take care of their bodies, stay home. Wait until the virus is available for you in your area. But the rest of us, the healthy people, we need to get back to work. We need to live our lives. It is unconstitutional, and it is against freedom and everything that we stand for, all the values that we stand for in the West, to be closing down gyms. Like, I lost 12 pounds between the lockdowns because my gyms in both my buildings in South Florida and Orlando, they locked the damn gym. I couldn't work out, and I didn't have weights. You say, oh, well, you can do exercise in your house. It's not the same. I got a nice treadmill in both of my places, but I would say probably 2 to 3 pounds of that were fat and the rest was muscle, and that pisses me off. So I have my health negatively impacted because we're trying to save lives of unhealthy people who already don't love themselves enough, and they're literally committing slow suicide by food. Like, so that's my problem. So I have to negatively impact my health because somebody else who's already not taking care of themselves might get sick? That's ridiculous. Who thinks of these things? That's not right. That's infringing upon my freedom. And the other argument is, well, you could get the virus and pass it to somebody and they die from it. It's like, stay home. Life is dangerous. Wear a helmet. You have to take care of your body. If you're eating and drinking yourself into an early grave, it's not my problem. Life is hard enough without destroying the lives of healthy people. And then the other thing is, you got people like, just over the weekend, Dr. Birx, who was telling everybody that you shouldn't travel for Thanksgiving, that you should stay separated from your family and your loved ones. What did she do? Oh, she went out of state and spent time with her family. And, her excuse was, oh, well, I was winterizing one of my homes. Well, whatever. Does that sound legit? She got busted, and so it sounds like she's trying to lie her fucking way out of it. I don't respect anybody like that behaves that way. You look at Gavin Newsom. They're only a few 100,000 signatures away from being able to recall him. I mean, this is California, left-leaning California. They're on the verge of recalling their governor because people are tired of this stuff. It's like, prime example was the woman whose restaurant is being forced to close, but yet a movie can be made in the same parking lot and these people can be mingling, and it's not a problem because it's an essential business. That's ridiculous. That's not fair. You can't have that. That's tyranny, incompetence, and stupidity on a mass scale. I mean, it's like none of these politicians seem to worry about the lives that they're destroying. I mean, you're destroying the mental health of millions of people around the world. For what? To save some people that are really old in a nursing home that are on the verge of dying anyways? And the other thing is, when you look at the stats of the death rates, the overall death rate, among human beings, it's about the same. Actually, I think it's actually down. That doesn't make any sense. So, because what the media is telling us is all these people are dying because of the virus. Well, we should have a ton of excess deaths because of the virus, but yet we don't. But at the end of the day, your lack or other people's lack of not taking care of their bodies, which makes them susceptible to the virus, it's not my problem. People got to be able to live their lives and earn money to feed their families. You can't make people starve. And when you see some of these lines of cars, just, for miles of people waiting in line to get food to feed their family, it's like, what is this? This is nuts. This is not freedom. This is tyranny and mass incompetence and stupidity. And this is what happens when you concentrate power in too few hands. Our whole country, the United States, was based upon the premise and the reality and the truth that the more you concentrate power in a small group of people, the more tyranny and tyrannical government you get. And so the Founding Fathers, their goal was to move as much power and decision-making out of Washington, D.C. and down to the local level as possible. Because they knew, and then, you look over the past 200 and something years that America's been around, it's just a constant 24/7 effort to concentrate more power in Washington, D.C. for the whole entire country. And, it's like being 50 years old, I've seen a lot of changes in my life, and a lot of things, we're just not as free as we used to be. We can't do the things that we used to be able to do. So it's just nuts with what's going on in the lockdowns. I mean, the reality is healthy people need to get back to work. Sick people should stay at home, wait for a vaccine. You need to open the gyms and all the businesses so healthy people can stay healthy. If people are stressed out because they can't feed their families, their immune system is weakened. That makes them more susceptible to getting sick and dying. That is stupidity. It destroys the mental health of families. It destroys marriages. The number one reason why divorce and relationships end is due to financial stress. And these idiots that run things in the West have created the conditions where millions and millions of people are on incredible financial stress. And so that's going to mean the end of that relationship. That's going to destroy that family. And now kids who wouldn't have had to go through a divorce and bad breakups of their parents are going to have to suffer through that. And then you read all the reports about the kids being depressed, and especially for the younger kids, the remote learning it ain't working. It's not working. Older kids in college, I got friends who got kids in college, and it's like they're sitting in their dorm rooms. They can't commingle. They're in sororities and fraternities. They join for the lifestyle and to make friends, and they can't even do that. It's like it's affecting their mental health. This is just asinine stupidity. And then when you look at all these people, whether it's Dr. Birx or Gavin Newsom, or it's just all over the country, all these people are like, oh, you got to stay home and you got to lock down, like Gavin Newsom. Oh, you got to go out with them. Pull your mask down in between bites. This jerk off was photographed a few weeks back in a restaurant with his friends. I think it was like $400 a plate at this high-end restaurant. None of them were wearing masks. What does that tell you? They don't believe in any of this bullcrap. They don't think the virus is that big of a threat to them. And so they're just living their lives, but yet they're looking down their noses to the rest of us like we're a bunch of morons that need to be managed by them. That's how they all look at themselves. They think they are our betters. Whether it's the John Kerrys of the world, or the Hillary Clintons of the world, or the Mitch McConnells of the world, or the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, or the Boris Johnsons of the world, or the Bernie Sanders of the world, all of these people, the way they think, the Bushes, the Clintons, fuck all of them. They go to school at all the most prestigious elite universities. They go to school with the Chinese communist elite. They send all their kids to get educated in the West. So you got the wealthy Chinese elite from the mafia CCC party, because all the power is concentrated in the Chinese party. And you go against what the Chinese Communist Party wants, they just murder you. There's no questions about it. They murder you, or they harvest your organs. I've read reports about they put a bladder in your aorta, so it cuts off the blood supply to the brain, so you're brain dead. But it keeps the blood circulating the rest of your body, so they can slowly harvest all of your organs, and they get about $500,000 per person that they do that to. You know, they treat their fellow human beings like cattle. I mean, it's absurd what's going on. And you look at all these people, and what's shocking, especially what's come out in the last several weeks, is all of these members of the Chinese Communist Party. When you look at the fact that there's like over 1 million of them that are living in the West, working for Western corporations, working in Western governments, working in associations and influencing people in the West. And then you get the Kerrys and the Clintons and the elite. They go to the same country clubs. And they think they're masters of the universe and that they're better than all the rest of us. And therefore, they should be making all of the decisions. They love the Chinese model. They love the fact that the Chinese elite can dictate, regulate, and control every aspect of people's lives. That's what they want in the West. They think that society would be better if the elite made all the decisions for the rest of us. And so when they do these lockdowns and all this incompetent stupidity, they don't really care. They look at all of us like we're a bunch of cattle to them. That's reality. They don't give a damn about us. If they cared about us, they wouldn't just throw in, hey, here's $600, $1,200 the first time around. Fuck these people. It's just absurd. You look at, I've got a bunch of things on here. You look at the cultural Marxism and the commie propaganda that's there's things that the 1619 Project and all this stuff, trying to rewrite history, pulling down statues, saying everything's racist and therefore we just eliminate it and rewrite history. It's like, this is absurd. You look, if you've ever watched any of the Yuri Bezmenov video, any of his interviews, the talks that he gave, I mean, this guy worked for the KGB. He ran the active measures program for the Russians in the West. Ideological subversion. This is what we're in. We're in an ideological war between freedom and liberty and communism, collectivism, socialism, total control. And you get people that their lives suck and they think socialism is going to save them. That if we give even more power to these same people that are screwing us over, that somehow things will really be better. Despite the fact that communism has been tried in over 100 countries on 5-6 different continents over the last 100 years, 150 years. And you have what? 150 million people dead? And it's failing in real time in Venezuela? Oh, but we just have the wrong leaders. Once we find the right leaders to implement socialism, it'll definitely work the next time it's tried. People that believe in that are just fucking brainwashed imbeciles. And they've given up. They've been demoralized by the commie propaganda. They believe that their success is out of their hands. That, like if you listen to Bill de Blasio in New York, all the wealth, we have plenty of wealth, it's just in the wrong hands. If you don't teach people how to earn money, how to make money, what the purpose of money is, where it comes from, how to grow their reserve of knowledge, how to develop their gifts, skills, and talents, and you just tell them, hey, I'm going to write you a check and give you a bunch of cash, and you give cash to poor people, what are the poor people going to do? They look at money as something to spend. They're just going to spend it. You can give them $1 million or $100,000. It doesn't matter. They'll be broke within 12 months because they'll spend it all. And then you're right back where you started. But if you teach them the purpose of money, how to invest it, how to grow it, how to buy income with it, how to invest it in stocks or Bitcoin or bonds or real estate or fine art or whatever it happens to be. These are all things I talk about in Mastering Yourself because people need to understand this shit. But you're going to have plenty of people in government going, oh, no, all the evil rich people, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you. I'll write you a check. I'm going to get you that UBI that I've been promising. And what do they throw? They throw peanuts to us. $600. It's like, are you kidding me? They don't give a shit about you. You can't give these people more power. They need to have more power taken from them. This is insane. I highly encourage you to watch the documentary we did, Economic Prosperity for All. And I talk about a UBI, Universal Basic Income, in there. I mean, we're creating trillions of dollars out of thin air through debt and lending it at interest. We could just as easily reduce the amount of money that's created as debt and just have what the government has been doing. Send it out as in a UBI on a monthly basis. Maybe it's $2,000 a month. Maybe it's $2,500 a month. Whatever you create in a UBI, you reduce the amount of it that's created in corporate and personal debt, because you have to have a stable money supply. Otherwise, if you don't rectify this boom and bust cycle, all the poor people and the middle class people are going to be constantly getting crushed every 8 to 10 years, and they'll never get ahead. And most people risk and go out and start a business and go for the things they really want maybe once in their life. And once they get crushed financially, that's it. They give up. They're never going to be capable of reaching their full potential ever again because they've given up. And they just want a safe job that earns them a meager income and a meager living. It's unconscionable to do that to people. Nobody can say, yeah, that's a good idea. This boom-bust cycle is working out swell. Ever since we've had this central banking model, we've had tons. It's like every 8 to 10 years, the same fucking cycle. Same thing over and over and over again. What does the government say? We need more power, more control to fix this. Well, I'm all for a UBI. And again, I talk about it in Mastering Yourself. I talk about it in Economic Prosperity for All. Go watch it. It's on my YouTube channel. Check it out. Understand it. It's like I don't have all the exact details of how to implement it, but if you understand money, the purpose of money, where it comes from, how it circulates in the economy, it makes sense. We need a stable money supply. This boom-bust cycle is incredibly destructive. It ruins millions and millions of lives. And then you look at, especially the last few weeks with all the stuff that's come out with this woman, this Chinese woman who was sleeping and having sex with Swalwell and who knows how many other politicians. I mean, honey traps. There, one of these guys was he was a former. This guy's like morbidly obese, and she was dating and fucking this morbidly obese dude in California. He was like, I don't know, he was like city council, like low level. And what's amazing is all the contacts that the Chinese Communist Party has, from people at the federal government to state and even down to the local mayoral level, city council level. I mean, they have people everywhere influencing people in our government to institute policies and ideology that is favorable to the Chinese Communist Party. It's like we're getting crushed from within and we're just letting this happen. It's like that obese guy, I don't remember what his name is. You can look the pictures up on him with this Chinese woman. It's like he wasn't getting any other pussy from anybody else. I mean, it's just absolutely absurd what's going on. So, you know, a couple other things I've got on here that I wanted to talk about. You look at some of the stuff with the election shenanigans. It's like, I think it was Georgia. There was, what was interesting, one of the guys that was in charge of the ballot counting for the state, he was saying that they adjudicated over 104, 106,000 votes. Well, when you look at the, I think it was Wisconsin or Michigan, I can't remember which one of those states it was. You guys can fact check me in the comments. But when they went through and they audited these Dominion voting machines, is like the report that came out said that the software was purposely written to make mistakes. And so when there's a mistake or there's a problem with a ballot, it gets set aside so somebody can manually review it and adjudicate it. But because there are so many tens of thousands of these, people were just mass adjudicating them and click, click, not even reviewing them. And you look at that, it's like, so there's one of two things happen. That software, they're just absolute incompetent idiots, or the software was written on purpose. And what the audit said was that the software was written on purpose to create mistakes, so the people that are sitting there looking at these ballots would get overwhelmed and just mass adjudicate them, because they just physically, it was impossible for them to go through all of these things individually. And so if you got a bunch of votes that are not counted properly, and there was one county where Trump got 6,000 votes, but the votes were flipped to Joe Biden. And then when they went through it, the Dominion people said, "Oh, it was a software glitch." Or no, they said it was an operator error. And the people that were counting the ballots said it wasn't an operator error; it was a software glitch. And so when they fixed the glitch, those 6,000 votes went back to Trump. Trump won that county. And there was also a Republican, I think it was a congressman, that had lost the election. But once the votes were flipped back properly, he actually won the election. And you got people now, Democrats are saying that Cocaine Mitch McConnell, but they believe he didn't win his election properly. So it's like you got people on both sides looking at this going, something's up, something's dodgy. I don't know what it all means, but I know there's thousands of people that have signed affidavits under penalty of perjury and going to jail of what they saw, fraudulent things being done. I think everybody saw the video of those suitcases or election boxes, whatever they were, pulling them out when the people left. You have people that signed sworn affidavits and they were told to leave. The Republican poll watchers were told to leave, that they were done counting. And then there was also video that I saw of one of the guys went over to the table where those suitcases were underneath it and looked at them, and he went, woo! And he's like, he was cheering. What is that? That's really highly unusual. So there are, I believe there's so far now, there's 7 states that have dueling electors where they've voted for the electors for Joe Biden, and they've also voted for the electors for Donald Trump. And there's a bunch of court cases. There was a new court case filed by the Trump administration over the weekend that was basically challenging what happened in Pennsylvania. So it's like, I don't know if anything's going to come of these lawsuits, but I mean, there's a lot of dodgy things that went on, and the numbers just, when you really look into it and you look at the evidence and you listen to the testimony, especially as Trump's lawyers went and presented to the different legislatures, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that you're not really hearing about. But the idea is that you got 7 states right now where you got dueling electors. And so on January 6th, when they get together to tabulate the votes, the Electoral College votes, if nobody gets to 270, then what happens is you have a contested election then. And since nobody got to 270, then that means that Congress has to vote, and therefore all the state legislatures will get 1 vote. And there's, I believe it's 27 of the state legislatures are Republican, and I think 22 are, or it was 22? It was 26 were Republican, 21 or 22 were Democrat, and there was like 1 or 2 that are like neutral. And so if each legislature gets one vote, you get 50 votes because we got 50 states, and the majority of them are Republican, then under that scenario, Trump would be the winner. I mean, it's in the Constitution. If there's a contested election that due to fraud, that's the constitutional process to remedy it. So I don't know what's going to play out with the Supreme Court. I don't know what's going to happen, because if you look at the Republicans, they seem like a bunch of spineless pussies. Maybe they'll back it when it comes time to vote. Maybe they won't. I don't know what's going to happen. We'll find out on January 6th. But I mean, I've seen a lot of evidence and things. Just there's a lot of dodgy shit that went on. Now it doesn't seem, from what I've seen, to be all over the country. It just seems like it's in a few key swing states, and mostly down at the county level where these shenanigans were happening. What it all means, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. It's like the Congress and the Senate and the courts are going to have to decide it. But from what I've seen in the courts so far, is they don't want to touch it because they're all getting death threats. The Supreme Court members are getting death threats. The state and local legislatures are all getting death threats. And it's just a crazy situation. So I don't know what's going to happen with it. In my opinion, the only way, we got to have free and fair elections. Everybody's got to feel that their vote counts. We should have paper ballots, and we should have ID to vote. If you don't have an ID and you don't have a paper ballot, these electronic machines, especially ones that are connected to the internet, I mean, it's pretty obvious that when you look at the evidence that was presented, that a lot of these machines were connected to the internet. That's illegal. You can't do that. And software was being changed. That's not good. That's not a good situation. That doesn't cause anybody to have confidence. And so you got Democrats saying, "Hey, Mitch McConnell, he didn't win his election." It's like, we can't have that. That's not acceptable. So you got to have people vote. And then, they say, well, it's voter suppression. It's like saying a poor person can't go to the DMV and get a fucking ID card. That's ridiculous. When I vote in my precinct in Orlando, I have to show my license. My name is on the roll there, and then I go vote. I mean, it's pretty simple. And the states that don't have that, it's like they're doing it on purpose to allow cheating. I mean, that's the only reason for it. That's the only justification for it. So I think it's a bunch of crap. If you look at, the Chinese Communist Party, it's like, what's interesting, if you study history, you look at Mussolini. Mussolini was a fascist dictator of Italy during World War II. And he said, fascism is the perfect merger of state and corporate interests. Well, if you look at the Chinese Communist Party, they're really not communist anymore. They've kind of morphed into fascism, where you have the perfect merger of state and corporate interests. As a matter of fact, the Chinese Communist Party requires that all corporations, in essence, give their data to the Chinese Communist Party, to the government. So you have the perfect merger of state and corporate interests. And if you look at our elite, people on all sides of the aisle, look at what goes on in D.C., and it's pretty obvious whoever gives the most money to these politicians is who the politicians look out for. It's the perfect merger of state and corporate interests. The people in Congress are picking the winners and the losers, who gets bailed out and who gets fucked over. And millions of Americans are getting fucked over. And this is unconscionable, and this can't be allowed to happen. This has to be remedied. A couple other personal things that I want to mention. The other night, General Flynn, who I'm a big fan of, I trust General Flynn. I believe him. He was meeting in the White House with Trump, and Sidney Powell was there. I know she's been savaged in the media, but she's a former federal prosecutor. She's got a lot of interesting evidence. I know they're throwing a lot of shit against the wall legally to see what sticks. We'll see what happens. But, I'm glad that General Flynn is back in the picture, and I'm glad that Trump pardoned him. The biggest mistake Donald Trump ever made was firing General Flynn, allowing those corrupt bastards in the FBI, Peter Strzok and Andy McCabe and the rest of those fucking worms, those fucking traitors, allowing those fuckers to get General Flynn and out of office. That was the biggest fuck up that Trump made. It's one of the reasons why he went through absolute hell over the past several years. But I'm glad that he got pardoned. It was totally justified. What they did to him was unconscionable. And I believe that eventually Durham, because if you listen to what Barr has said, is all those guys are in trouble. Peter Strzok, Andy McCabe, the lovely Lisa Page, who else? Comey, all the rest of them are going to be in trouble for what they did. It was a faction of the upper echelon of the management of the FBI that basically took garbage that was originally from Hillary Clinton, this whole Russia nonsense. They were the ones that pushed it through. And I hope all those fuckers go to jail. I don't think anything will ever happen to Hillary Clinton because the elite are pretty much untouchable. But if you listen to Barr, it's obvious they focused on a core group of people that were running the FBI. And what they did was totally illegal by spying on Trump's campaign. And I want to see these fucking bastards pay for what they did. They have committed high treason against the United States of America. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I figured I'd go on a rant this morning because I wanted to. And I'm sure it'll piss a bunch of people off. I'm sure a bunch of people are like, yay. But at the end of the day, I'm all about freedom of the individual and liberty and justice for all of us. Right now, I think everybody kind of looks and goes, there's a two-tiered system of justice. You know, if you're a part of the clique and the elite, you can get away with anything pretty much. But if you're not, you get crushed. And that just can't be allowed to continue. Another thing that I think is really awesome is over the past year is the fact that gun sales are an all-time high. Ammunition is tough to get, like especially for my SPR rifle. It's like I'm not even able. I talked to the manufacturer, Black Hills, that makes the rounds for that rifle. They're not even going to be available till next summer. And I talked to him a few months ago. He was saying probably around December. Now he's saying next summer. I mean, I hate that because I can't train as much. All I got is my reserve. But I'm glad that millions and millions of Americans are now new gun owners, because as I wrote about in Mastering Yourself, it is the duty of every single American to be armed, to be confident, competent, and be safe firearm owners and users. Every American should have a pistol, they should have a good rifle, and should also have some kind of everyday carry gun. Not because you're a gun nut or you necessarily love guns, but because as an American, you look at it as a duty. When you look at the words of the Founding Fathers, they wanted everybody to be armed. And the majority of Americans in this country have become fat and lazy and complacent. And they say, oh, we'll just rely upon the police to protect us. Well, the reality is most police departments, and I discussed this with the Mocha Bear, John Dufresne. You can follow him on Instagram at mochabear_actual. And he's the guy that I train with. He's probably the best firearms trainer in all of the southeastern United States. There's nobody better than him. And as we discussed in the documentary, is like, because he trains most of the police departments and all over the state of Florida, and that everything's budget driven, and most cops barely get 4 hours a year of firearms training. And firearms is a perishable skill. You must constantly train, whether it's dry fire practice in your house or going to the range. If you're relying on the police to come and save you when most cops don't even go to the gun range because they don't want to spend the money and they're lazy, it's like it just doesn't end well. You as an American are supposed to be self-reliant. Your safety of yourself and your family is your responsibility. You can rely on a government bureaucrat or somebody from the police to come and save you, but they're 10, 15 minutes away. And the person that, if you need a cop with a gun to protect you, just keep in mind, there's about a 97, 98, maybe 99% chance that that person showing up with the gun to protect you hasn't even fired the thing in a year. And most of these police officers don't do any kind of force-on-force training with training munitions, which I have done, where you're actually in a shoot house with training munitions, and when you get shot with them, they sting. They call them the bee stings. And so if you have to know what it's like to be under stress and be in a gunfight and knowing that there are people waiting in the shoot house and they're hiding, they're hidden, and you have to find them and shoot them before they shoot you. Your gun should be locked up in a safe place, away from children, away from people that don't know how to handle them, and you should get trained by a competent professional, preferably somebody like I train with, who's a former Special Forces guy who absolutely loves firearms, and he's an absolute expert at it. But I love the fact that I'm so proud of my fellow Americans that have gone out in this past year and are purchasing guns, and they're learning how to use them safely and responsibly. Obviously, not everybody is, but the majority of them are doing their duty, and I'm really glad to see that, because I don't care who you are as an American, everybody is supposed to be armed. I don't care if you're an Indian on an Indian reservation, or you're living in the ghetto, or you're living in a multi-million-dollar gated community. You're supposed to be armed, competent, and safe with it. It is absolutely your duty to be that way. And that's one of the things I'm very grateful for, because one of the things that keeps America safe and free is we have over 70 million gun owners in the United States. It's the largest private army in the world. You can take all the armies of the world with all their guns and all their ammunition, and it still won't hold a candle to the fact that we have 70 million and increasing every day gun owners and users. And that's the way it's supposed to be. It's written into the Constitution. That's why it's called the Second Amendment, and it's supposed to be there. And that makes me very happy. It causes me to sleep better at night. And if people don't like that, especially those, because I usually get a lot of shit from people in New Zealand, in Australia, and the rest of Europe who for the most part willingly disarm themselves, hoping that some government bureaucrat is going to come and protect them. It's like, I don't care. This is America. Americans are free men and women, and we answer to nobody. So if you haven't read my first book, Mastering Yourself, yet, go to understandingrelationships.com, subscribe to the email newsletter, and you can read it for free on my website. You can also obviously read 3% Man for free. And if you'd like to get my help personally, you got a personal or a professional issue you'd like to get my help with, you can book a coaching session at understandingrelationships.com. Click the products tab at the top of your screen and book a coaching session with yours truly. Until next time, live free or die.